Hi, my name is Roby Bellemans and I've been creating art and educational exhibitions, lectures and workshops internationally for over 50 years. In a few books I have already described how one can do it all better. But as far as the art of guiding is concerned, there appears to be not much literature. So I started interviewing a number of tour guides with a lot of experience, resulting in the book Guidance Conversations with Tour Guides. However, that's in Dutch and all the examples are related to Dutch museums, which is why I made this short general introduction video especially for Vietnam Cultural Exchange. More extensive material can be found on the Patreon site. So I started to work for several museums and a cultural centrum, but not as a guide, because I was more interested in inventing new ways of exhibiting. But that was for adults, and the children found them very boring. So I thought, yes, there are for children special books, movies, theaters and clothes. Why not art? So I started to make those kind of exhibitions, and it appears that there is also an interest in art exhibition with art especially made for children. Well, it happens one day I just had an exhibition in Sweden. This is the poster of it. You can see, I recognize Pippi Langkous from Sweden. And the work that came back from the exhibition was still in boxes and standing in our shop when Gerrit Staal, the Philips marketing director, was visiting us. He also loved the idea of making art exhibition for children, and he asked me whether I could make a big exhibition for them to celebrate their 5th anniversary in Taipei. I've always been fascinated by Chinese culture, so I said, yeah, no problem, when shall I bring it? Well, this was the result of the exhibition in Taipei. It was my first time flying, and KLM had given me a free ticket, business class. But those days I had no idea it was more luxury as economic class. Well, the exhibition was at the American International School and it did look great. Of course, because Dutch children book illustrators, they are really very good. I had to do some guiding for the Dutch stream, and that was also great to do. Very smart kids. Then the director of the school had seen me doing so and asked the Dutch teachers whether I could also do guiding for one of their classes. But I said, I'm sorry, I don't speak English. Nevertheless, the class came, and later came the whole school. One of the Dutch parents was a bit shocked and asked the teacher how they could let me do a guiding while I don't speak proper English. It's a shame. Well, the teacher said that it was not our idea, but the school wanted it, and moreover the kids didn't mind. They loved the exhibition and my strange talking. So, well, those international schools have good contact with each other, and soon I was asked by Shell International to develop a project for their international schools. And there I did the Proverb project. As you can see, it's a game, a happy family game. It's very funny with a lot of beautiful drawings and things like that. So Proverbs is spreekwoorden in Dutch. And a proverb is like, a good story is half of the work. Again, it was mentioned for the Dutch stream, but just as in Taipei, also in Bangkok, Brunei and a lot of other places, I had to do the whole school. However, my English has never gotten much better, as you have already heard, of course. But the advantage of this is that even people with a limited knowledge of English can enjoy my guided tours. And in addition, I also learned 5 words of German, French, Spanish, Italian, Turkish, even Vietnamese, and face. Yes, face. I learned how to use my face by performing as a stand-up comedian, which is, in my opinion, the best preparation for giving lectures and guided tours. Well, as a result of the Proverb project, there was a large interview with me in a national newspaper, including this lovely nice picture of me. And there were a lot of people who were reading this inclusive the public department of the famous Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, that the museum that President Obama wanted to visit so much. Well, they suggested that I spend a week walking around in their museum and seeing how the public reacted to what happened in the museum. And there were many guided tours in that museum, and they wanted to hear what I thought of it too. That was very interesting to do. Later I was asked to visit museums nationwide and see how public friendly they were and how they gave guided tours. So doing so, I interviewed some great tour guides for my book. Because I was also experienced in guided tours and activities for children, the new director of the Mondrian House, Eva Kleeman, Mondrian House is the house where Piet Mondrian was born, invited me to work for them. And the other day we had an exhibition with the work of the famous Greek-American abstract painter Nassos Daphnis. There was David Baronian, who was asked by Nassos to make a video of this exhibition, and David wanted me in his video. So here you can see me during 1 minute guiding, and then we go over to the more interesting part. En sommige werken die blijken 10 jaar later nog steeds interessant te zijn, en dan blijkt iemand hele goede ideeën te hebben gehad. En in sommige gevallen dan denk je, ja, het was leuk dat ik ermee bezig is geweest, maar nou, het was toch eigenlijk niks. Hoe vaak heb je, het is een beetje net zoals met heel veel andere dingen. Als je moet veel proberen, veel ergens aan werken, en sommige dingen, nou, die blijken niet daarna geel, rood en blauw. En dan zie je dat het blauw net echt zwaar bovenop ligt en dat je ook dieptewerking krijgt in het schilderij. Als je die precies andersom zou doen en je zou dat donkerblauwe eerst beginnen en daarover rood en dan geel en dan wit, dan zou er veel minder dieptewerking zijn. En daar heeft deze man zich ontzettend veel mee bezig gehouden. En het helemaal leuk was, dat kun je niet zien, hij is wereldberoemd omdat hij ook boompioenrozen kweekt. Wat? Boompioenrozen. Dat is een heel speciaal. So this part of the video is intended as an introduction to some important aspects of the guiding. On our Patreon site you will find more detailed about it. How to prepare a guiding and several kind of problems a guide can meet. But let me start by making the big difference between tours that are given to impart knowledge and tours that are given to a general interest. In my view, those are two different kind of tours. On the one hand, you have guided tours for a group with a considerable amount of prior knowledge, and they come with a very specific purpose to increase specific knowledge. On the other hand, you usually have a very mixed group where the prior knowledge and interest are very, very diverse. They hope for a pleasant time, and for sure there are also participants who will rather have done something else, but they have to come with the family or with the group. So we could describe the two different guiding as fact-based guiding versus social-based guiding. In the first situation, you must have a lot of knowledge of the exhibited. In the second case, you must above all be a good entertainer. The difference becomes more evident when we look even how we start the guiding. A fact-based guiding starts with telling what is come, what they are going to see. That's very important, so the visitors will not start to make questions about topics that still are to come. For social-based guiding, it's completely wrong to start with telling what is to come, particularly when you tell them they will later see something very special, because now they want to go as fast as possible to what is come and what that special thing is, and they have no more interest in what is seen right now. So what I'm going to do is to discuss in this video are the following parts of guiding. How to start the guiding. It's a bit talking about the composition and the motivation of the group. How to keep attention. The importance of the language. About interaction. And about a few other things. And then how to end. And I will end this video with some short remarks about guiding at an art exhibition, because that's very different. So let's start by looking how to start, by looking at the group self, because the visitors are essential. They are the reason for the tour, not what the museum or the exhibition has to offer. Yes, for the first group, it is what on display is very important. But for the second group, there can be very different reasons for a visit, such as, yeah, it was a very rainy day, so we don't go to the beach, let's go to the museum. For the fact-based guiding, we usually have good information about the group, because they send it ahead and you send them material so they can prepare themselves. So, but still, we start with checking this information, partly to be sure that we are with the right group, you never know, partly to show the visitors that we are prepared, which is very important for this type of group. So this kind of groups mainly consist of like-minded people who usually have the same background and interest. This means that the guide can focus entirely on transferring knowledge, because there's a one-on-one relation between the group and the exhibition. For the guide of the second group, it's much more difficult, because there can be many reasons for the visit, and in general there is a gap between the interest of the visitors and the exhibition. The reason for their visit is to have an interesting time, and when there are also children, they hope the children will learn something, well, at least something. The composition of the group can be very different, and not everyone is equally interested or motivated in the visit. It's really not easy for a guide. One solution is just to start with the guiding and hoping for the best. Another approach is to create a friendly, relaxed atmosphere. So the guide might ask the members of the group who they are and what would they like to see, and that doesn't work well for a social-based tour. People have to tell something about themselves, and some people, they are not good at it, while others, they are too good. Asking what they're expecting is completely wrong. A guide must always keep in mind that the guide is guiding and must keep the lead. That's a very important thing you learn while doing stand-up. Not only that there can be always someone who takes over the conversation, but others can come with suggestions that are not possible, and then you have to explain, yeah, we cannot do that or we cannot do that, and that's a complete wrong start. So it's better to start with saying, so I can see that I have an interesting group, or a few funny remarks like, oh, I see that some of you have brought a notebook. Well, I hope it's not to write down all my mistakes. Why this is better is because you approach the group as a group, just do not focus on individuals. A risk is that when you say something wrong to an individual, the whole group might become negative, and that's not what you want. So then we start the guiding itself. The most important is the language we use. There's also a big difference in the use of language. The guide of the first group can expect a good prior knowledge. Nevertheless, transferring knowledge and facts requires a different language than the one we normally use in a dedicated classroom. Because in a classroom there's a distance between the speaker and the public, and they can clearly understand what the speaker is saying, because often he uses a microphone and a good sound installation. So when you're guiding on a tour, you are much closer with each other, and that makes it more difficult to hear everything correct, especially unusual words. So in the classroom, a speaker can use a video projection information on the board. You can do that during a guiding. This means that you must simplify your language and keep almost constantly eye contact with the group. For two reasons. It's easier for them to understand you when they see your mouth when you are speaking. And the other reason is that you can observe their reactions to see whether they understand you or not. It means that you have to know exactly what is behind you. You can practice this way of guiding by studying the exhibition or seeing it as a cartoon. And a cartoon has a clear story, so you can introduce a clear story in your guiding. And then you do not always have to look back, because you know in general what's behind you. It also prevents you from giving too much information. Too often one sees the guide wants to convey everything he or she has learned over the years, all during one single tour, and then it comes. So here too, the two types of guided tours distinguish themselves. Although a specialized tour can also be made quite light-hearted with some small jokes, but when working with a usually unprepared group, one can do a lot more with the help of body language. In addition, having shortcomings is not a disadvantage, it's rather an advantage. There is nothing better than not being able to remember a name or something, and then you regularly got the help from the group, and then it's a nice interaction, especially if you can make them to give the wrong answer. So what applies to all tours is that spoken language is very different from written language. When preparing a tour, we write down what we are going to tell, but that is written language. Using beautiful and rich language needs a very good pronunciation and the same vocabulary as the visitor use. In your free time, you should listen to common conversations. Within 15 minutes, the language has become very simple and familiar. A good guide keeps that in mind. After 15 minutes, people become tired, and then it's time to make the language less formal and less rich. So to keep the attention is during a social-based guide more difficult. In fact, very difficult, because the interest is what there is to see, in what there is to see, is much less present in the group. So you will have to work with the opportunities of the interaction. Again, the interactive possibilities between the two groups are very different. During fact-based guiding, you can reduce the flow of information for a while by asking practical questions, very practical. That way you stay on the topic, because everybody comes just for that specific thing. But that doesn't work with a social-based group. The point is that you have to suggest that there is an interaction, because asking questions to the group that can result in answers that have nothing to do with the exhibitions. Sometimes they cannot answer reasonably quickly, and then it might become counterproductive when they start to talk with each other about what you were asking, and then they're starting to talk about a lot of other things. As a stand-up, you learn certain techniques. Let me give one example. At a certain moment you can easily say, yeah, that comment you just made is really, really interesting, while you look vaguely in some direction. No one remembers that comment or who will have made it, but it turns out that someone from the group had made a good comment, and that feels good. It feels like a good interaction. For the first group, the objects in the museum provide a lot of interesting information and facts. So the guide has a lot to tell, but when you do that kind of guiding for the second group, we will see people not silently, out of respect, but after a short time everything goes in one ear and goes out the other, because it's too much information. And also museums and exhibition spaces, they have a lot of noise, a lot of background noise. There are other people walking around, and then there is so much more to see than what the guide is telling. So when we are doing a social-based guiding, we must have another goal than sharing information. I myself belong to the second group of tour guides. I do not aim to transfer a lot of knowledge. My first goal is that people spend a very pleasant hour, and if I manage to open a few doors, then I'm very satisfied. So what I do is to narrow the exhibit, and I've learned that how to do this through classic music, more specifically the music of Richard Wagner. Wagner used to compose very long operas, like his Ring des Nibelungen takes 4 days. So Wagner introduced the leitmotif. It's a signature designed to represent a character or a theme. And that leitmotif appears throughout the whole composition. As a guide, you can do the same. Find one or a few leitmotifs that are present over the whole exhibition. For example, what people wear on their head, such as hats, caps, helmets, or certain utensils that are easily recognizable, and that gives you the opportunity to tell short, interesting stories, and those products, they will appear constantly through the guiding tour, so you can always come back to the hat or to the utensils. So now you might think, does this has also something to do with stand-up? And how much can you tell about a hat? Well, when you are doing stand-up, you cannot come with complex stories, because whenever you bring up something new, you're starting again, and you're not building on the enthusiasm you just have created with your previous talks. So, and how do you talk half an hour in an interesting way about a simple hat? Well, there's also another very good example or exercise to master that. Take a paper and a pen and put an object in front of you and write down 50 questions about it. Don't look for answers, just questions. Answers stop a research or a search. You must have questions. You will discover that every question could be asked by one of the group participants. And that is how you involve the group while keeping yourself in charge. You look at them, and then you can say, yeah, I think you want to ask this, and that. And then there is always one of them in the group who want to ask them. So you're always good. So those question training will help you also to give facts indirectly, because you learn to see the possibilities. Like, for example, instead of saying this dates back from 1970, that's a fact things. Who knows 1970? But when you say, yes, there were no cell phones in those days, then people remember, oh yeah, time before cell phones. They don't know what time it is, but they still know the social situation. So there are many of these kind of things. In the papers on the Patreon site, I go give you more information about this. Now, how to end the tour. It's obvious that there is still to tell, but when you end the tour, you must always keep enough time to make a good ending. That's so incredibly important. Too often we are so enthusiastic and we forgot, oh, it's already the ending. That's not a good thing. You must stop maybe 5-10 minutes before, because at the end of the tour you first start with a compliment for the interest and the visit and all those things, and then you start to make a summary of what has been seen and discussed. So you must do this it must sound objective, but of course the good thing should have the upper hand. And keep a few good statements for the end, because the end is what people mostly remember. And each visitor should become a kind of ambassador for your museum or exhibition. So next you tell what is coming, and for the ones who got interested, give them some book titles or internet links, and tell them that when they leave their email, they will be kept informed. A very, very clever gesture is to give a very small gift. That is how you make use of the law of reciprocity. Even, or because when it's just a small gift, they will feel that they have to do something in return, like telling their friends, it was a very nice visit. So keep that in mind. Now, about guiding an art exhibition, my view on giving guided tours of art exhibition is not shared by everyone, because mainly I'm opposed to asking visitors if they like something, painting or something like that. On the question, oh, what do you think? Do you like this painting? What usually comes as an answer are platitudes. What one thinks is often what is socially acceptable. It immediately becomes personal. While you work with a group, you must avoid that. So in my opinion, when in an art exhibition, it's more convenient to focus attention to objective observation, through asking a simple question like, well, it looks like this artist works like a lot with yellow, isn't it? Or when you say, do you see how he puts the colors against each other to get different effects? Those are very, very objective and practical things to talk about. I also like to talk about the use techniques and the possibility in techniques. Just telling that when you cut in wood, what is cut is gone. There's something a lot of people do not always realize, because when you are painting in oil, you can always paint over it to make it again. But when you cut in wood or something, you cannot put the wood back. In fact, it's the same with watercolor. Watercolor, you cannot make it white again, so that you have to do it in one time right away. So those are things I love to do. I also love it when there are a lot of studies hanging there, and when there is some material so you can try out certain techniques, because I think understanding art starts with understanding the technique. It's nice because of course there is art, when I see it I immediately don't like it, but that's more because it's like with music, there's certain music, especially very popular music, I do not like so much because it's too much noise. I prefer Jimi Hendrix. It's also noise, but different noise. So, but with art, I just need a few days, sometimes a week, before I can give a good opinion about the artwork. And my opinion, the reason why I do not like to ask people, what do you think about, is because my father was an artist, and I know he was working months, sometimes years on an artwork, and then there's somebody who's coming in, and within a few minutes you want they to give an artwork that has so much content, and so I just think you should not force people to do that. It's better to let them, give them time, tell them, make, the more you know about something, how it is, the more often you start to like it, or just not to like it. So I'd like to end with a very nice quote from a Dutch author, Guus Keijer. And he wrote, once he heard a couple, and when they saw an abstract work, they say, that kind of, or that kid of us, yeah, they can do that too. What a filthy mess. So Keijer concluded, this response says a lot about how they feel about their children. Thank you very much. See you next time.